2020 has been an extraordinary year in so many ways for many of us. We all had to reckon with a global pandemic, many of us for the first time in our lifetime. We saw protests and riots sweep across the nations with the Black Lives Matter movement that brought social justice to the forefront of so many of our screens and newspapers. We saw a variety of responses to the pandemic and also some of the unfortunate consequences in lack of resources and funds as businesses and jobs went to the wall all up and down the country. I wonder what comes to your mind as we look back on the year. What are the sort of feelings you experienced that would accurately reflect what we went through? Perhaps fear, confusion, certainly a lot of disruption. Did we have any hope throughout the year? Of course, everything that we've seen on a worldwide, global scale this year was not just confined to somewhere far away, as often the headlines and the front pages are. Because of the nature of the pandemic we've been living through, whatever was happening in the United States or in China or even in Africa was happening at the ultimate local level for us here too, in Erskine. We had the joy of uniting with other partners and churches in the work of EBI Unites in order to provide essential support for people suffering from the wake of the COVID crisis. We are indeed at the end of 2020, but we all share a sense that we're still very much in the middle of something. Even though we are closing out one year, there is a road yet to go until we come through this crisis together. This Advent, I've been reflecting on and so blessed by the words of a beautiful and well-known hymn, O Little Town of Bethlehem. 2,000 years ago, or thereabouts, Bethlehem was also a very little town, perhaps even smaller than Erskine. And yet what took place on that night, which had been planned from all eternity, was going to have effects so dramatic that they were not going to be confined to that little town. Indeed, you could say what happened that night in that little town was going to be felt all through the cosmos, not just for time, but also for eternity. And not only that, but when we think of the words and we think of Christmas carols all focusing on this one night in history, we also have the sense that it's not the end of the story. We celebrate in that hymn that Jesus was born on that night and praise God that he was, because we have a hope. But the story doesn't end on that little night in Bethlehem. There is yet a road to go. Jesus still has to live, suffer, die, and be raised again in order that he can fulfill the plan that God had always set him aside for. And so we come to the last line, so powerfully describing what we as Christians hope in verse 1. The hopes and fears of all the years are met in thee tonight. We are able to celebrate Advent, perhaps with a renewed sense of poignancy on this Christmas Day 2020, because in the dark of the night, God often births something wonderful and great. While things look gloomy and bleak, God is often working out a plan to deliver and save his people. And the hopes and fears that we have had this year, that we have for 2020, we can be assured that because the little baby that was born that night, Jesus, is God, he is able and he is willing to absorb all our hopes and even all our darkest fears for 2021 and indeed all the years to come. Thank you for being part of our church's life, witness, and journey this year. We have persevered and prevailed up to this point. There is a road and a ways yet to go, but we trust God that when we put our hand in His through faith, that He will bring us through safely to the other side. Wishing you, as your minister, a very Merry Christmas and a blessed and an enriched and happy New Year when it comes.